Okay, if you're open up your devotional booklets one last time, if you'd like to take notes there. This is my last time I'll be here with you, so I want to leave you with something that I believe the Lord would have me to say. One thing that I certainly learned, and this isn't necessarily a military thing, but it's really a life thing, is that life is serious. There are times where that seriousness snaps you back into focus, because life is that way. Life is in a state of flux. Things don't always stay the way they are, and there are things that remind you along the way of how serious life really is. Yes. I could tell you of times when, through my military service, where I saw grown men cry like babies. I mean like babies. I'm not saying they were whining. I mean tears, just like little babies. They wanted out. Times where on the rifle range, people would turn their rifle up down and put a round in their foot because they wanted out. Times where people would take the rifle sling off and hang themselves. Wow. Things like that would happen, and it would snap you back to the seriousness of what we were doing. Yes. See, why did they do that? Because reality struck them. I don't know for what reason they joined the military, but eventually reality hits you. This is warfare. And what we learned, I was an infantryman, and I wasn't like you sit somewhere and hit a button and watch a drone somewhere. It was face to face, hand to hand. Me or him. And if you give up, he's gonna kill you. One of us is going to sit down there and wallow in our blood and die. One of us is. So the reality of that hit me and hit us sometimes, what we were really doing. See, there's no choice. Please listen to this. In warfare, you don't have a choice. In the United States military, the way it was, and I think it might still be today, deserters are shot. In other words, you can't run away. They can legally put a bullet in your back if you run away. Let me bring it home to you. It'd be like me telling you, in this room over here, there's a man in there, and he's been trained, just like you have, in warfare. You're going to go in there, and you're going to fight to the death, and if you don't, I'm going to shoot you right here. How would you like to be put in that situation? But that's the reality of it. Yes. That's reality. It strikes you. It's the truth. So sometimes I would forget that, and I'd be a goof-off. Be a goofball, you'll excuse the term, maybe it's my Chicago, but I was a goofball. And I didn't take it seriously. We would take a 6 months tour of duty in Okinawa, Japan, and when we were there was a place there called the E-Course. It stands for Endurance Course. It was way up in the north part of the island, and we would go through, you name it, rope climbs, wall climbs, running, everything. At one time, you had to go through a cement sewer pipe and make it to the other side, but it was underwater. So if you get caught in the middle of it, you'll drown. Things like that. And I can remember going through it twice. When you get to the end of that course, one person gets chosen to be a casualty. And that person had to be carried. So you'd have a makeshift I lost the word. A makeshift where you carry somebody. What is it? Yeah, stretcher. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. So you'd have these two sticks, and you would take your utility shirt off and put it through the sleeves, and you'd tie this guy down with your belt onto the stretcher, and you'd carry him. And it wasn't a short distance. It was far. It was miles away. And it was mountainous country, and because lots of people had been through there before, the mud would be to your knees. It wasn't an easy thing. It was difficult. So the first time I went through that, I knew that difficulty was a hard thing. And the second time that we went through it, we knew it was coming. And I kind of made myself more visible when they were going to make that decision. Well, it turns out they picked me to be on the stretcher the second time. And I thought, well, I got it made. I get to get carried this time. And so they made a stretcher for me. They tied me down on the stretcher, and they started carrying me. And these were people that really were my family at that time. We did everything together, everything. And I would taunt them. And I would say, hey, I'm kind of thirsty. You got a drink? Can I have a drink? You mind? Stuff like that. I would just taunt them the whole time. I was having a good time with it. Well, they were struggling. They were having a hard time with it. And so I'd say, anyway, taunting, enough said there. You understand what I mean. When we got to the end there, and there's a helipad there where the helicopter would land, and that's as far as they needed to take somebody. And you get them there, and you've done what you're supposed to do. Well, I remember when they got me there, they sort of unceremoniously dumped me at the helipad. And then they took off. There was a wall there. It was a cinder block wall, I remember. What they would do, because we were totally filthy, they would just put a fire hose on us and wash us off against the wall there. That's how they would do it. So those guys went over to that wall there, and they were being washed off, and they left me there. I had to untie myself and get myself out of it. And I realized something. Of all the taunting and all the easiness and the cutting the corners, that I was just being a goofball, the seriousness of what they just went through left me. And I felt myself detached from them all of a sudden. I don't think they necessarily intended it to be that way, but they couldn't help it. They had been through something very difficult together, and I wasn't. I didn't go through that with them. Yeah. The seriousness of what we were doing, they felt it, and I didn't. And they didn't want to have anything to do with that. In the Bible sometimes, there's people that got the seriousness of what was going on around them, snapped them back got their attention. But Uzzah, he didn't realize the seriousness of the sanctity of that ark. And he thought, I'm going to reach out and touch it. Well, the Lord had to get his attention, didn't he? And everybody else around there. The Lord's holiness is no matter to be considered, it's real.
Yes. Amen.
By Eli the priest. He got into the place in the temple there where he was just floating along. He was just going along there, and he didn't take care of his kids. Well, that's fine, but it came a time where both of his boys died in battle. Yes. He fell back and broke his neck. The Lord had to snap them back to attention and help them to understand the seriousness of what about Ananias and Sapphira? They were goofing around, weren't they? We're going to sell it. Sure, it's okay to lie about it. We're just going to join this. But it was half-hearted. They were cutting corners. They were goofing off. And the Lord had to snap them back to attention and get their attention. So some of the things of all the things I suppose I could say, it's that this is not a laughing matter. I look out and see all of you, and I see a lot of young people, lots of potential.
Yes.
And there will be some of you that the devil is going to do things to you you can't imagine. You're going to let him do it.
Yeah.
Because you're goofing off. You're not taking it seriously.
Yes.
Life is no laughing matter. And those that have been in the ministry long enough have seen what the devil can do. If you take a week like this, and you go back, and you don't have a measure of seriousness, you're going to be destroyed. You see, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. Either you stand up and fight against Satan and his attacks, or you will be taken as a casualty. Don't think that you can run away. You can't. You cannot. There's no choice. Eventually you'll see it, and the Lord will eventually get your attention. I see some of you sometimes, and maybe you're saying to yourself, well, it's the last day. So maybe as a young lady, you might be saying, I think I'm going to dress a little bit more seductively. I'm going to try to get a little more attention. This is my last day. You're goofing off. That's going to catch up to you. You young men, goofballs, biggest goofballs sometimes. You're playing around, sarcasm, all the rest of it. It's ha, 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 funny and laughs all the time. Eventually, the Lord is going to get your attention.
Yes.
And if I can help you to understand that what we do, now this thing with the military and all that is fine, but we were just dealing with physical things. That's it. Had I perished in military service, that would have been the end of my body, but that's not the end of my life. I guess what I'm trying to say is what we deal with is infinitely more important than what I did.
Yes.
Because we're dealing with eternity.
Amen.
And if you're going to be a goofball, if you're going to let life go by and you're not going to take it as seriously as it really is, then I hope God gets your attention. I hope something happens where you open your eyes and you say to yourself, wow, This is no joke, no laughing matter.
Amen.
And may the Lord bless you then this last day, and pay attention, take it seriously.
Amen.